So thanks for joining us on our first guest speaker episode of Better Business, Better Life. We're here today with Warner Cowin, who's here to talk to us about happy wife, happy life. Or more specifically, actually how he creates that space for both personal and family life, particularly as his wife Liz is actually a co-founder in the business. Yeah. So Warner, welcome.
Thanks, Debra. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you here.
Yeah.
Great to have you as my first guest.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get started, I'd really like to understand a little bit about what it is your business does. So I know on the website it talks about being Australasia's leading technical tendering and procurement consultancy. What does that really mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Very simply put, we help government agencies procure large pieces of infrastructure, engineering infrastructure like roads, bridges, rail, water, those types of things. And on the flip side, we help contractors and suppliers try and win government contracts as well. So we did it across both New Zealand and Australia.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. And also I like to get to people to know you a little bit more personally as well. So if I can ask you a personal and professional success that you've had in the last year or so.
Yeah. I mean, as we chatted before, 2020 was pretty crazy. So it's pretty hard to disconnect my personal and my professional life with how our team responded to the COVID crisis and in particular the lockdown. We had a pretty crazy year, and when we sat down in December and reflected over a few wines, we did incredibly well. We won a few awards. We did well financially. Our revenues are down, but our margins were up. But, we've had some real challenges. We've had, people who were working remotely that didn't have the right place where they could work or a safe place they could work. We had challenges associated with the stress and anxiety of whether we were going to continue as a business like most organizations did. And so we had this kind of whole roller coaster type experience. And I think when you're emotionally connected to your business, as most founders and entrepreneurs are, that's very hard to disconnect the professional and personal. So how we ended up at the end of the year for us was probably, for me, the highlight or the best, the highlight from a professional and personal perspective.
Perfect. Tell me about the awards. You won a couple of awards this year, is that right?
Yeah. So 2020, we won the EY Procurement Supreme Award with one of our customers, which is phenomenal.
High five.
I know, phenomenal, really. So that was a great team effort from our team. And we won the best of the best for the Westpac Business Awards for strategy and planning. We got announced last year, even though that was for 2019. So that was real significant for us.
Fantastic.
And awards are really important, not from a marketing perspective, but it makes the team feel really good about what we've done. And it's that third party endorsement that you're doing things right. So it was real highlight for us.
Congratulations to both you and the team. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, I understand that you were a little bit of a late bloomer to this whole entrepreneurial business. So would you like to just sort of set the scene and tell us how you started out?
Well, I think, just to understand, I was in the military when I left school at the university. I was in the Air Force and then trundled through life, left the Air Force, went to the UK, got into construction. So I kind of jokingly say I never had a real job till I was about 34 and then joined a corporate entity, joined Downers here in New Zealand. And that's how I really got involved in some serious construction activities. It's kind of linked to what we do now. Yep. Spent 5 years doing that. And then I got to a point where I kind of realized possibly I wasn't right for corporate world. Was looking for something a little bit different. So at the age of 39, nearly 40, Liz and I made a call to start our own business. And that was pretty interesting because we had a 2-month-old at the time and a 2-year-old. And, I was the single income earner on the family, and we had like everyone who owns a home in Auckland, had a reasonably big mortgage.
Indeed.
And stress. And we made the call at a later age to start a business, and that was 7 years ago now. So
Liz at that time was a full-time mum, or
yes, she was, yeah.
And so what made you decide to take that leap?
Yeah, I think I realized that life was very short. And actually I had confidence in my ability to create something.
Yep.
And I think, there's always that anxiety when you go and look at starting a business around whether it's going to be successful or not. And I think Jim Collins talks about throwing pebbles first. Yeah, and I kind of was throwing a few pebbles and I was kind of sussing out whether I was going to hit the target or not before I fired the cannonball. And, I was confident we had something there, and I had Liz's full support, which was really important.
Yeah.
And so we pressed on. And I think, we've after 2 weeks, we've always been busy. So that's 7 years ago now. And we've come out of a garage in Sandringham here in Auckland through to...
I remember those days.
Yeah, you would, yeah. Through to, we've got a team of about 20, which includes our board and some full and part-time contractors as well. So, yeah, so we've really progressed.
And do you still work full-time in the business?
I kind of do. I mean, to be fair, my business is my hobby, kind of weirdly. So I don't look at it as working. I genuinely love going into work and exploring new things and chasing new opportunities. I don't know what else I would do, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not great at sitting still, and I don't have like hobbies that consume time. I mean, we've got a young family which consumes time.
You've got 3 children, right?
Yeah, I got a 5, 7, and 9-year-old. So outside of work, when Liz and I are, be part of our family, those two things can consume us. The business and raising a reasonably young family.
And how was it starting a business with both of you involved in the business, having such a young, 2 months old? That's tough times at that time in life, right?
Yeah, but it was interesting because I think what I've learned is that how much control you have over your situation as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Mm-hmm. That actually you have more control. And probably I perceive as less risks if you're sort of interfacing into your large corporate. So, you have the ability to, if you have to call 100 people for a job, will you? Or 1,000 people, you will.
Yeah.
So, the risk is all relative and the stress is relative. So we were determined to make it. So there was never any option not to, really.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay. And I'm really interested because, a lot of people go into business with their partners, their wives, whatever. And the whole topic, happy wife, happy life, is not quite as it's positioned. Yeah. It's more about how do you find that balance, but also more importantly, how do you, as you said, create that space for family and business when they are so entwined, So from the beginning to where you are now, I'm guessing if I ask Liz, she might have a story to tell as well, but how would you see that's played out?
It's funny, when I mentioned to her that this was the topic of conversation, she kind of looked at me and with a raised eyebrow. And I've got a number of very strong, influential women who are part of my team at work, and they all laugh and think it's hilarious that we're talking about this because we're definitely not the perfect couple. We all have our trials and tribulations. So I'm not going to pretend to you that we are the poster couple for anything, really. So, but I think what we've learned in particular around how to manage a business and a family as a couple is really important around creating space, deliberate space, and being very clear around roles and responsibilities. So, for example, I'm very much the CEO of the business, and Liz looks after all our people side. Her background's in HR.
Right.
And interestingly, Liz reports to someone else. She doesn't report to me.
Nice move.
So we keep things very, very deliberate around trying to create that space.
Yep.
We try very, very hard not to talk about business outside of working hours.
Yep.
So one of the things that's really important for us is that, particularly for me, is I have to come home and decompress and not have to think about some of the challenges we have at work. And so that's one of the things those are two things that we try to do deliberately.
Yeah.
And then it's also about how do we manage our time between us as a couple more effectively. And I don't think last year wasn't a good example because we were kind of cocooned together, and it wasn't. But as you know, we try and be very deliberate around holidays. And one of the things we've always done is take 3 weeks off mid-year. No phones, no emails, where we as a family, we go somewhere where we're away from things. So that normally entails us heading to somewhere like Australia, where we just basically can disconnect.
Yeah. And
my team can pick up the pieces. And I can spend 100% focus and attention on Liz and the kids. So that's really important for us as a couple to make sure we have very deliberate time away. After this podcast, I'm going to head to the beach and spend some time with the kids, and we're going to probably right up till February. So we're in early January now. How do I spend a bit of balanced time with the kids at the beach as well? So, yeah.
Sure. And I suppose we learn from our mistakes, don't we?
Yeah.
We said that when we first talked about this. Well, what do you think have been the biggest kind of obstacles, challenges you've had, and then what have you learned from those along the way?
In relation to our, managing as a couple?
Yeah, I think so. And also about the business a little bit as well,
I think, when I think about the challenges we have, in particular, it always seems to be around people.
Yep.
And because Liz and I are quite emotional people, we are very emotionally invested in our team and their personal wellness and so forth like that. So when some of our team members are having challenges, we take that very personally and we try our best to resolve it. So it can be very tricky to disconnect ourselves from that emotional challenge that maybe our team members are going through. So that for us is key. I think what we've really learned, and going back to some of the work you're doing, is the importance of having a framework and structure, and importance of mentors and those types of things when you're looking to scale and grow a business. And we got a, I think one of the eureka things that happened to us is I got involved in EO quite early on, Entrepreneurs Organisation, as you know.
Yep.
But also we got a business coach quite early on as well. And we were quite small at the time. We were only doing about $200,000 or $300,000 a year. But what it did is it set the structure up for us to scale and grow in a real sustainable way. Mm-hmm. That we weren't actually, growing and creating more work for ourselves. We were backfilling stuff with people and systems and processes. We've been really clear around where our target market was. And I think what that did is allowed us a very relatively comparatively stress-free way of scaling and growing. So I think that's one of the really key important things.
It was actually one of the questions I've just written down. I was thinking about the fact that you take 3 or 4 weeks away.
Yeah.
And most entrepreneurs that I start working with kind of go, there's no way in the world I could take 3 or 4 weeks away. The business will fall down without me. And I suppose you've just answered that in some respects, as if you put the systems and processes in place, you have the right people in the right seats, you've got everything sort of nicely structured, it actually gives you more freedom. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, 100%. So, for example, the holiday concept was one of my first mentors. He said, what do we want to achieve this year? And we talked about revenue growth and new customers and, some personal stuff as well. And we were talking, he goes, you know what? When was the last time you had a really decent holiday with your family? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, probably this Christmas just gone. I said, were you on your phone? Were you checking your computer? I said, yeah, just about every day. He said, well, why don't you set a goal within 12 months' time, you take 2 weeks holiday, no phone, no emails. And that was a challenge to me. So what it meant to me was that I had to be really deliberate around selection of people. Mm-hmm. I had to find a 2IC in the business, someone who could deputise for me. I had to get a minimum of systems in place in order for the business to continue without me. And when I got home and explained to Liz, this is what I'm thinking, she booked the holiday that night, like literally. And we were going to go here. Yeah. And this is what we were going to do. So it's been phenomenal. It's a really important part of our family routine.
Like I said, that strengthens the family, doesn't it, as well, by having that time together.
Yeah. And you're creating memories the whole time so that, we were, not really bummed, but we were disappointed we couldn't go away. Mm-hmm. And I think, but we've realised, we've got some great options here. I mean, kids are, we can go to the mountain. I'm from the mountain originally and Pauanui and places like that. So, we shouldn't complain.
Definitely not. I think we're in a very, very fortunate position over here at the moment. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, what were the other sort of real big obstacles that you've kind of hit in is it almost 8 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, 8 years in April. Look, I think one of the challenges we face as a professional services business, and we kind of peaked a little bit. We had really good growth for the first 5-6 years. But the last 2 years, we kind of stagnated. And I think what we're finding now is how do we productize? How do we go away from selling time to creating experiences? Mm-hmm. And we invested quite heavily in developer products and experiences. And it's been really good for us. What it meant is that we needed to really understand who we sold to and what are their core issues and challenges. Yeah. We need to be clear on who our customer was, our core customer. And then design an experience around that. And that meant so we could, rather than just selling time, we could create an experience, we could market an experience, we could train people in order to deliver these things. And then we just had our first dabble into digitizing those experiences now.
Oh, wow.
So, how do we create better scale through our business? So I'm really excited about 2021 in terms of where we're going. And in fact, I think we learned a really good lesson. We actually recruited some people during the lockdown. Yep. We recruited a new principal, and there'd been 3 principals, but actually getting a new principal who can run a business, who can run a subset of what we're trying to achieve, and the influence she's had, and it's been phenomenal, really.
That's great.
So I think we've got the courage now to invest and get some good people and pay top dollar for good people, but also be really clear about the products and services we're offering.
People really are everything in a business, aren't they?
100%, you know.
What do you do if you've got the wrong person in the business? Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah. I mean, you know, when you first start, and I needed somebody, I met a guy at a pub that happened to be loosely, you know, do a little bit of work in our space, and he was looking for work, and, you know, I grabbed him. I was just really chuffed that anyone would want to come and spend time with me, you know, like as in my business, because I didn't feel I had the credibility as a business. But we're becoming more and more, we're absolutely very selective on choosing the right people.
Yep.
And we have a very values-based approach. So one of the things we were very clear on early on was, how do we define our values? And values are really important because they become the unofficial playbook of how you run a business.
Yeah.
So for the processes and procedures, if you empower your staff to make a decision based on values, that's all you can do, you know?
Yeah.
So
I think values have been a little bit overused in corporate, and they tend to be things that get stuck on the wall on a screensaver, and people pay no attention to them. So how do you keep those values alive in the business? So that's the playbook, but how do you hold people to that?
Well, I think the story of our values, and we probably need to just touch on that briefly. I mean, It was one of our graduates who said to us, look, you know, I think values are important. And I'd come from a military, which is a very values-based organisation, and where you really abide and live by your values. And then I got in this corporate world where, actually, to be fair, it was quite transactional. So we abide by our values, but actually, you know what, if we're not making enough money, then we won't. So I was kind of like a bit sceptical. But, you know, I owe it to Lucy Olsen, who's in Germany at the moment, for the fact that she persevered and we pressed on. But it was a game changer for us. And how we bring our values alive, it starts with a recruitment process. So we have an element of competency, but actually what we're trying to choose is the right person. So the right set of values to align with that type of person.
Yeah.
So if we get the right values in, we can build competency, no problem at all.
Absolutely.
And in terms of bringing them alive, it's really important. So we have things like values-based stories every Tuesday at our team meeting. So we had some this morning. But also our morning huddle is really important as well. So I think if you're trying to create an environment where people feel comfortable, then how do you create a level of vulnerability within your business as well? Yeah. So it's really important with our huddle, which is a quick catch up where, what did you do last 24? What did you do next 24? Any stucks? Yep. So what are issues or concerns? I think that the trick is to implementing that thinking is for the leaders of the business to be vulnerable first.
Yep.
So you've got to show uncertainty to your team and where you're uncertain. So what that does is send a clear message to everybody that it's okay to be uncertain. And that reinforces those values, particularly if you want people to be open, honest, and transparent.
Perfect. And I suppose, 2020 certainly was a roller coaster year, wasn't it? There must have been times where you perhaps wondered what was going on and where this would go to. So a bit of vulnerability here. What would you say is the worst point in 2020 for you? Going a bit off topic.
Yeah. I probably just touching on something, just going a little bit tangent here, but normally our huddle's really quick. Normally it's about 8 to 10 minutes for whole company to get together and just smash through it.
Yeah.
But we found during the lockdown that our huddle would extend to half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, because people were just expressing how they were uncertain or concerned. And actually, what's interesting is sometimes for not necessarily for everyone, but there were times where I thought that possibly where the anchor was for some of our staff was with their work colleagues, as opposed to the environment they might have been sitting in remotely.
Yeah.
So again, just observing the power of vulnerability and a safe place for people to work.
I think communication became key, didn't it? So obviously you had communication before, pre-COVID, if you like, and then throughout the lockdown. How do you keep the communication lines open between you and your wife, given that, you try to keep things in business hours? Yeah. And with the whole team, a wider team, what do you do to make sure that things are being communicated well? Yeah,
look, it's I don't think we've got this sorted out at all. So probably when I look at the way Liz and I have had discussions and how we've interacted last year, it's been really, really tough for us because we haven't had really that time out as a couple that would like to do. One of the really cool things we did, and probably the best day of my last year was the best day, without a doubt, is that after our work function, Liz and I just stayed in a hotel in the city for 2 days.
Nice.
Yeah, and then, we had kids looked after. And on the Saturday, we just went to Rangitoto and we worked around and up Rangitoto, went out for lunch, just kind of really spent some time together. So that we need to be more deliberate in creating those opportunities for us as a couple just to spend time.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. As a team, we're quite structured around how we communicate. So we have our morning huddles, which is quite important.
Yep.
And then we have our team meetings on Tuesdays, which is very much a tactical, slightly strategic meeting.
Yep.
And those are those key points around our day. And then we have another round of the meetings like sales meetings and cash flow meetings. So those are kind of our deliberate points of contact. But, it's always being about having that open door policy so anyone can feel free to come and have a chat to you if they're uncertain or concerned.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Love it. Hey, I think that's wonderful. I think we're just about at time. Doesn't it go quickly when you're enjoying yourself? Yeah. But we did promised our listeners that we would actually give them 3 tips they could take away that they could put into action almost immediately. So just talking about some of the things we've talked about, what would you say your top kind of 3 tips are for keeping that space for both your personal and professional life?
Look, I think if you get the business right,
yep,
in terms of the way the business runs, then it creates more time and space for you to invest back into your family. And you mentioned getting a coach early on, having structures, operating system, that kind of thing. Yeah. So probably not 3, but just see how we go. But for us, around getting a business coach, around I have a business coach, I have a mentor. I have EO, which is Entrepreneurs have a thing called Forum, where people come together and share experiences. So I have 3 mechanisms in which I can share some of the anxieties or the challenges I'm facing as a business owner outside of my immediate work. We also have an advisory board as well. Yep. So, I invest heavily in terms of external people to provide support and guidance for me. Yeah. And I think what's really interesting about that is that it allows me to work smarter, not necessarily harder. And, the situation with, our business coach and how that really transformed the way we ran our business was really significant. Yeah. The other thing, I think you can't underestimate the importance of, values-based people within your organization. And I know it's very cliche about, getting the right people on the bus, but it's so true. One good person can make significant difference to your business. Yep. And likewise, one person who's not great can destroy a business quite quickly. I agree. Yeah. So the values are really, really key. So how do we create a culture of vulnerability? Things like the huddle we talked about, reinforcing values-based stories. Because you've got to teach people how to do this stuff. You've got to teach people that are new to your business around what it is to work for our organization, be part of our team. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really important. What else did I write? I just wrote learning, actually. Yeah. It's really important. So I probably do 1 or 2 days of learning every month, whether it be through Forum or some sort of virtual learning or reading. So it's something I really enjoy. And I think being very deliberate around taking time to learn and be away from your business is really key. So there's probably 3 things that have, I think, really helped us in terms of growing and growing a scalable business. Like, for example, learning the flywheel from Jim Collins, read about that, and it's something I really wanted to implement, but I took time to read about it, understand it, and so forth like that. Perfect. Read any good books recently? Yeah, I have actually. Bezonomics by Brian Germain. Okay. So it's a story about Amazon and Jeff Bezos's. Oh, yes. I read Getting a Grip by Gino Wickman in the holidays. And I read the Answers to the Big Questions by Stephen Hawking. So I'm interested. I'm an engineer, so I'm quite curious about physics and so forth like that. And some trashy novels. Of course. It's a holiday, for God's sake. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that is awesome. Hey, look, Warner, really, really appreciate you being my first guest and for coming in and sharing so vulnerably and giving people some insight into your business and how you got there. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, Deborah. Take care.